Hi students, welcome to lesson 17, Modernization and Westernization. Now let us start with the introduction. Westernization and modernization are synonymously used. The term modernization has come to be used to describe the changes brought about in a non-Western country on the lines of more advanced Western countries. Modernization is synthesis of old and new ways and therefore takes different forms in different societies depending upon what culture each of them has. The British brought with them new technology, institutions, knowledge, beliefs and values. Westernization resulted not only in the introduction of new institutions, but also in the occurrence of fundamental changes in the old institutions. India is a secular country where the people have the freedom to practice any religion and also to convert to another religion of their choice. So, all the cultures are freely accepted and respected by the Indians. But the influence of Western culture started in India during the 19th century when the British established their colony in the country. Western culture considered as the most advanced culture on the globe and has started surmounting its impact on Indian roots. The Indian culture, which is one of the oldest and the richest culture in the world, with every language, custom, beliefs, ideas and the tap use codes, instructions, work of art, architecture, ritual ceremony, etc. India's cultural history of several thousands years old, and it shows continuity and subtle change with a strong third of duty epitomized in the relative power of culture and unique display of unity in diversity. With the conquest of European power and subsequent British rule in India has had a profound effect on the Western culture on Indian society, and the Western culture had made its presence in various forms. Now, let us study the objectives. To learn the meaning of the concepts modernization and westernization, to know the changes brought by these two processes in India. Now, let us study the meaning of modernization. The concept of modernity and modernization are tremendously interchangeable, mostly because of their ambiguity and vagueness. Each one lacks any precise meaning, and modernization has assumed a lot of significance, particularly after the end of Second World War in 1950s and 1960s. The Industrial Revolution in England and to some extent the French Revolution in France brought modernization to limelight. The process of modernization dates back to the age of Renaissance and formation in all walks of life like the literature, science, religion and etc. The meaning of modernity goes in such a way that modernization and modernity convey a classification of the history of mankind into ancient, the medieval and modern. Here, modernity refers to the stretch of time, but modernity in relation to time is also confusing because it may mean one thing in India and another thing elsewhere on the earth. Modernity is distinguished from traditionalism, and a modern society also differs from a traditional one. Both tradition and modernity are systems of ideas, values and institutions which are different from one another. But there is no society which is either purely traditional or purely modern. Both cannot be rigidly compartmentalized, and the term tradition has been defined by Yogendra Singh as a cumulative heritage of a society which permeates through all levels of social organization such as the value system, the social structure and personality structure. Thus, tradition is a social and cultural heritage, and a traditional society therefore contains three basic elements of tradition like value system, social structure and structure of personality, which are more or less permanent. The concept of modernity has following distinctive characteristics such as the intellectual characteristics are like emphasis on science and technology, reason and rationality, belief in progress and human development, control over environment and avoidance of superstition and orthodoxy. Political characteristics include marginalization of religious influence from state or political matters and rise of secular democratic polity, universal adult franchise and the democratic values. Religious characteristics constitute a secularized society free from religious orthodoxy and decline of religiosity. Social characteristics include the decline of a traditional social order, decline of joint family system, alienated kinship ties. In relation of education, it involves the literacy, emphasis on knowledge, trained skill and the like. The economic characteristics include changing over to commercial agriculture, use of machine and advanced technology in agriculture, growing industrialization and urbanization, improvement in commerce, industry and growth of market, etc. Thus, modernization implies a bunch of new socio-economic, politico, religious and intellectual system, totally separated from the traditional one. The rapid switch over from traditional to modernity is faster because of rapid industrialization, economic development and urbanization. But there are certain time tested socio-cultural traditional rights associated with marriage and death, which have denied any faster modernization in both Western and non-Western countries. Modernization as a value-free, the value-free term involves rational and scientific transformation of the socio-cultural values of institution. On the contrary, Westernization is a value-loaded term with a restricted connotation of initiation of Western culture and values. As M.N. Srinivas, for him, the term Westernization is ethically neutral, whereas modernization carries ethical value and it accepts only what is good or right. Further, modernization, like Westernization, does not destroy the cultural identity of the non-Western countries. In Indian society today, there exists a sort of misconceived modernity or mismatch of Westernization and modernization. In metros and big cities, life has become Westernized. The Western culture is applied mostly by the youth in their lifestyle like food habits, dress, music and dance. The word modern or modernization is the derivative of the Latin term the modo, which means just now or the latest. The Oxford English Dictionary defines the term modern as something of the recent times or something new or latest, not concerned with classic. Thus, the literal meaning of the term refers to anything which is new or latest in lifestyle, the dress, art or thinking. Modernity and progressivism in social change may also look alike. It may mean the society constantly moving ahead in the direction of progress or improvement at all times. Modernization as a historical process with continuity also involves industrialization, urbanization, rationalization, bureaucratization, democratization, secularization, Sanskritization, tribalization and the like rationality, reasoning with scientific temper and outlook. The term modernization has been severally defined by several eminent scholars, and one of them is the Indian sociologist Professor Weissing, who writes, modernization symbolizes a rational attitude towards issues and their evaluation from universalistic, not particularistic point of view. To him, modernization involves diffusing scientific and technological know-how, and C. E. Black in his book Dynamics of Modernization suggests modernization as a process by which historically evolved institutions are adopted to the rapidly changing function that reflect the unprecedented increase in man's knowledge, permitting control over his environment in the recent centuries that accompanies the scientific revolution. Thus, modernization emphasizes upon the diffusion of new standards like scientific outlook, rationalism based on reasoning, universalism, humanism, individualism, secularization, democratic liberalism and the like. Application of scientific know-how to meet human requirements is also another aspect of modernization. From psychological point of view, modernization brings about changes in individuals' motivation, temperament, attitude, personality and role perception. Now, let us study the dimensions of modernization. Modernization is multidimensional in character. One may categorize it into social, psychological, intellectual, demographic, cultural, economic and political dimensions. Modernization at political level is also known as political modernization or political development. Political modernization has its own distinct features. It rejects the traditional authorities like feudal lords, religious heads and godheads and traditional community leaders. Political modernization therefore involves increasing people's participation in the political process through business groups, interest groups, political parties, NGOs and voluntary organizations. Thus, political modernization includes increase in the capacity of the political system to find and utilize the resources of the society, increase in the need for coordinated social action to solve all kinds of problems that a political system faces, and to increase in political participation. Modernization has following salient features. Now, let us look into these features. A scientific temper outlook, reasoning and rationalism, secularization, high aspirations, total change in attitude, norms and values, developed economy, broader national interest, democratization, an open system, a challenging personality, and finally, dynamic leadership to organize socio-economic, cultural and political movement and undertake reforms. According to Rustow and Ward, steps to be taken for modernization to bring modernization in any society. Faster industrialization of economy and adoption of scientific knowledge and technical know-how to make industry, agriculture more productive and profitable in modernization process. Secularization of ideas, values and rights to bring increased social mobility. The spread of scientific technical education, higher standard of living and thinking, high degree of urbanization, high level of literacy, growing per capita income, developed and widespread mass media, better health and hygienic conditions for women and children, eradication of poverty and unemployment, broader outlook to fight the superstitions and blind faiths. Now, what are the preconditions for modernization? Now, let us look into the preconditions for modernization. Modernization of society through a switch over from traditionalism requires certain essential preconditions. They are awareness of people to accommodate to the new technology, the conditions, a sense of urgency, availability of opportunities, and emotional preparedness to accommodate the change over from traditionalism to modernism, either slow or fast. Emergence of devoted, dynamic and committed leadership to lead the modernized society, society's inbuilt capacity for accommodating such transformation. According to Myron Weiner, the main instruments which make modernization possible are education, developed mass communication, both print and electronic media like telephone, radio, TV, cinema, newspaper, book and journals. Nationalist ideology and sense of patriotism, charismatic national leadership, strong and stable governmental authority to implement policies and programs directed for modernization and to compel and force people to accept such policies. Seminars and workshops to be held to highlight the influence and impact of modernization. Now, the question is how to achieve modernization. Modernization can be achieved by two ways, by modifying the tradition and by criticizing the old aspect of tradition. Both these traditions are regulated by two guidelines such as unity and integrity of the nation are not endangered, benefits of the modernization process are available to the society and community as a whole, and in no case should one alienate himself from the society and tradition. It should be strictly ensured that all contemporary changes like ragging in educational institutions, eve-teasing, divorce, living together without being married are not modern. Now, whom should we call modernizers? To elaborate, the list of modernizer includes the following: elites. The elite constitute those who are more equal than others. They may also be called first among the equals. Elites include the political elites, religious elites, social elites, business elites, academic elites and the like. These elite class contribute new ideas to replace the old ones. Circulation of elites make changes in the elite structure and make their political elites contribute to political modernization. The intellectuals are the think tanks of storehouse of new ideas and the new experiences and new strategies of change from tradition to modernity. The political leaderships in India, the eminent nationalist and political leaders have also played great role as modernizers with their belief and faith on certain ideologies and political techniques. For example, Gandhi and his concept of non-violence, Tilak's concept of Swaraj as birthright, Nehru's concept of democratic socialism, secularism, nationalism and internationalism, non-alignment, Indira Gandhi's concept of Garibi Hatao, abolish poverty and protection of weaker sections of the society, L.B. Shastri's slogan of Jai Kishan, Jai Jawan, Rajiv Mera Bharat Mahan and emergence of computer and IT era. Army having spirit of devotion, service to the nation and sacrifice also acts as agents of modernization. The neutral bureaucracy having clear cut objectives, efficiency and universality act as modernizers. Social reformers with their modern outlook expedite modernization process through various social religious reforms. Abolition of child marriage system, introduction of widow remarriage, abolition of sati system is a few such instances. The eminent socio-religious reformers like Rajaram Mohan Roy, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Swami Vivekanand, Swami Dayanand Saraswati have fought for casting out the orthodoxy and socio-religious superstition and creating fundamental base for change over to modernity. According to political scientist Samuel Huntington, modernization consists of industrialization, urbanization, increasing levels of literacy, education, wealth and social mobilization and more complex and diverse occupational structures. This means that in order for a country to be more modernized, they must look to upgrade their technology, the forms of communication, production levels, etc. The Industrial Revolution is the perfect example of modernity, as it brought forth many machines that changed the way production was being conducted in Europe and the United States. If we now talk about Westernization, we must understand that Westernization is more related to practice, religion and cultural changes. So, if we were to adopt Western ideas, we would adopt their way, their culture works rather than how their economy runs. Westernization can be dated back to the European colonization, where it developed countries such as the United Kingdom, France, Spain, etc. had taken over other parts of the countries and colonized them. In these colonies, they sought to incorporate parts of their own culture by introducing their religion, way of living, food, etc. As people started adopting these cultures, ideas and religion, they became more Western. Westernization and modernization are two ideologies that are under constant debate. But when we talk about modernization, it is also often considered to be in hand with Westernization. If we look at the definitions of each, the terms are completely different from each other and refer to different processes. Now that we have established that these terms are different, we now come to the question, the theory of modernization, which covers the progression of a society from a pre-modern or traditional society to a more modern society. This is believed to be done by adapting and developing their societal structures, which in turn can also change cultural structures. According to the theory, traditional societies will develop as they adopt more modern practices. People who out modernization claim that modern states are wealthier, powerful and enjoy a much higher standard of living. The misconception that modernization is often closely related to Westernization has resulted in many countries rejecting the idea of modern ideas. To maintain their culture, including India and many other Islamic countries, modernization is not limited to simply technology, but can also include ideas or theories. Let us look into the impact of Western culture on Indian society. There were different kinds of Westernization. One kind to emergence of a Westernized subcultural pattern through a minority section of Indians who first came in contact with Western culture. This includes the subculture of Indian intellectuals who not only adopted many cognitive patterns or way of thinking like the style, but also supported its expansion. This impact of Westernization was mainly in urban areas, but in some villages more Westernized than urban areas. The consequences of Western culture on Indian culture, where we try to take up the affected caste, joint families, the marriage and other social structures. The introduction of new institutions like the press, the Christian missionaries, etc., modern values like humanism, egalitarianism, secularism have entered the Indian value systems. Our criminal law has been reformed. Evil customs like sati ended. Untouchability was abolished. The concept of welfare state was introduced, and thus governmental activities on welfare measures have expanded, and far-reaching reforms in Hindu society through social reform movements like Brahmo Samaj was inspired by the Western educated middle class in India. Many political and cultural movements emerged, like the movement for the eradication of caste, spread of mass education, and the emergence of an educated middle class as the vanguard of the freedom movement. Now, let us study the agents of Westernization, British rule in India. The establishment of British rule brought about deep and far-reaching changes in economic, political, educational and cultural spheres in India. It offered some new avenues of social mobility to the scheduled caste, for example, new economic opportunities, education, Westernization, conversion to Christianity and politicization. Indians employed in government offices of converts to Christianity, those educated in modern schools and colleges, and some of them launched great movements like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Tagore and Sir Syed Ahmad, etc. Those who went to England for study or medical treatment, those who lived in port towns. The tolerant spirit of the Indians was largely responsible for the spread of Westernization. There was no wholesale but only the selective Westernization. Old styles continued side by side, but there was also a movement to preserve Indian values like the Arya Samaj. Now, the influence of Western culture on Indian society can be also seen on the caste system. We find that the traditional social organization exemplified by caste system has undergone several changes, yet continues to exist in Indian society, performing some old and some new functions. During the last few decades, as a result of the forces of modernization, the ideology of caste has become less pervasive in an individual's day-to-day life. Caste rituals have become increasingly a personal matter rather than the public due to the changed circumstances of the living and the forces of industrialization and urbanization. The place of residence and food habits are influenced more by an individual's workplace and occupation than by his or her caste or religion. Industrialization and the factory systems broke down caste barriers to a large extent. Urbanization made many castes live together. Transport broke down and the caste restrictions also. The impact on English education were changes in dress and food habits, supply of water through pipes where you cannot ask the caste of the person who sends water down the pipes. The impact is also seen on women. The educational advancement of women, entry of women into all occupations, social reformers also helped the liberation of women discarding Parda system. The impact is also observed on social structure. The career open to talent and no longer based on caste, and the money and the wealthy regarded important declines of the rituals. The impact is also observed on the marriage performances. Marriage came to be regarded as a contract and not entirely a sacrament. There is also impact on the culture. English words came to be used very commonly. Daddy, mummy, cutting the cake culture contrast the Indian custom of lighting a lamp with the Western habit of blowing out of the candlelight. Western gadgets freely used like television, washing machines, etc. The impact of Western literature on Indian literature and also the religion. The art, cinema, Western dance, musical instruments and modern religion, decline of superstition, ritualism, rise in scientific beliefs, influence of Western culture on the tribes also. The Westernization of tribals had begun during the British colonial rule when they first came in contact with them, and not all tribes were subjected to efforts of modernization. There were many which continued to survive in their traditional mode still Indians after India's independence. The faith of traditional material culture and styles of tribes were to be preserved as museum specimens. The attempts were made to synthesize the customary and modern laws. In all these efforts, the focus was on modernizing the tribals. The changes in the styles of life have followed two trends. They are changes in relation to the political system. The political system, which developed during the British rule, gave increasing opportunities for the political articulation to the people of India, especially those who acquired Western education. This facility was taken advantage by the backward classes. The advent of independence and the introduction of the adult franchise and more recently the Panchayat Raj institutions have increased the access to power, especially the political power, to the backward classes. But at the same time, access led to shift from Sanskritization to competition for positions of higher bureaucratic and political power. There is also social mobility through Westernization. The upwardly mobile untouchable caste adopted the lifestyle implied in Westernization. This was facilitated by the prevalence of various non-Sanskritic traditions among them, such as eating meat and drinking alcohol. To sum up the lesson, what we have learnt is modernity and progressivism in social change may also look alike. It may mean the society constantly moving ahead in the direction of progress or improvement at all times. Modernization as a historical process with continuity also involves industrialization, urbanization. As M.N. Srinivas has accepted, the term Westernization is ethically neutral, whereas modernization carries ethical value and it accepts only what is good or right. Further, modernization, like Westernization, does not destroy the cultural identity of the non-Western countries. Thank you.